Think about vaccines. So the first thing about a vaccine, and the most obvious thing, is it's intended to prevent disease in the individual that receives the vaccination. Does it do that? Yes, with a very high level of efficiency, that's what vaccine technology does. If I get a vaccine technology, if I get a vaccination, it protects me from, say, smallpox. So that's what the purpose is. Level 2, let's suppose that I look at vaccines and I say to myself, you know, I could probably get a lot more economic development in countries where these diseases are prevalent if I vaccinated everybody, because then they'd be healthy and then they could work. Now notice with level 2 that you're going to have more distance between the goal and the technology itself. If what I want with the technology is simply to avoid this person getting a disease, the coupling is very tight. Use the technology and I get the result. But if what I want is to use the vaccine to help economic growth, then that's a much more diffuse connection. It's much less tightly coupled because there's so many things that intervene. So for example, if I give everybody a vaccination, but there's a civil war, I'm not going to get economic growth. If I give everybody a vaccination, or I try to, but the public health system isn't very good, so I can't get vaccinations to people, then that's an independent problem. That's a level 2 problem. And then you get into level 3 problems, right? Let's say that I am able to give vaccines to everybody. But what that turns out to do is to generate large population bulges in unstable countries. What we know is if countries that cannot provide jobs have very large populations of young people who can't get jobs, who are at loose ends, that is liable to be very politically unstable. So vaccination may be in some ways contributing to social instability in certain kinds of conditions. That's certainly not what I anticipated when I thought of the vaccine technology. So you get these different levels and patterns of behavior. Before we leave vaccines, notice something else. When we get to discussions of human enhancement, a couple of lectures from now, we'll talk about different kinds of human enhancement. And it will sound like this is all new stuff. But a vaccine is a very powerful human enhancement. It is not a treatment for an existing condition. What I am doing when I give you a vaccine is I am taking an engineered technology and I am putting it in your body, which is a perfectly healthy body, and I am doing it for the express purpose of, for example, increasing your lifespan because you won't get mumps or whatever I'm vaccinating you for. That's a human enhancement. That's a human enhancement technology. So everybody out there who has been vaccinated is already an enhanced human being. Does it make a difference? Yes, it makes a difference. Look at those societies where vaccination is routine, and what you find is they tend to have much higher lifespans than societies where vaccination is not routine. So what that tells you is that in fact, not only is it an enhancement technology, but that it's effective and it's working. So to some extent, remember that when we get to the enhancement discussion, you are already enhanced. Now, a couple of observations. The first, and this is very important to remember, is that products are developed based on level 1 analysis. This is important if you're talking about things like, for example, technologies that the military is developing. The military would develop and deploy technologies because they are effective for its mission. So let's say, for example, that I'm developing, or actually I have developed, we have little robotic hummingbirds. You can look up robot hummingbird on YouTube and get all kinds of nice examples. So I have a little hummingbird that's a robot. Why do I want that as a military force? Well, I want it because it enables surveillance, very effective surveillance, and I can do it and get a lot more information from the battlefield without necessarily putting any of my people at risk. That's a level 1 purpose. I'm doing it because it's effective under those circumstances. Now, every technology has level 2 and level 3 impacts. We may not know what they are, but we do know that they are going to happen. So the fact that we can't know exactly what they are does not mean they won't happen. It just means we don't know what it is that's going to happen. That's a huge difference. So let's say I develop these hummingbirds. Now a hummingbird is a platform, right? A hummingbird robot is a platform. So let's say that I put a camera on it and I bring it back to civil society, back to the United States. And divorce lawyers get a hold of it. Boy, that becomes messy. So we have all these hummingbirds with cameras following everybody around. And what about if political parties get a hold of it? Isn't politics in this country ugly enough without having that kind of thing going on? Well, of course it is. So what are we talking about in that case? We're talking about level 2 or perhaps level 3 impacts. What that tells you is that the technology may be developed for perfectly good reasons, but that doesn't mean that the level 2 and level 3 impacts are going to be good. So you need to be careful to understand that all 3 of those levels are implicated when you begin developing a technology. This puts a lot more emphasis on something that we'll be seeing throughout this series of discussions, and that is that we can respond effectively to more complex environments, to a terraformed Earth, to the human as design space. But it requires changing the way we think about institutions. So it's not so important to just get a snapshot of an issue and put a policy in place. That works for simple systems. What we're talking about now, level 1, level 2, level 3, these are all very complex phenomenon. And particularly with level 2 and level 3, we won't know them until they begin to happen. Because of that, what we need to do is develop institutions that are better at learning and following development so that they can respond effectively to those changes. If we do not develop those kinds of institutions, we won't be able to effectively navigate in a much more highly complex, much more rapidly changing environment. So remember, as we discuss some of these issues, and they appear to be very difficult to manage and control, part of it is because they are, but part of it is we can do it if we change the way that we think about them and if we change the institutions that we work within. We'll talk about that later, but that's important to remember, because what this does is not simply say, the world is too complicated. Let's go out and get a drink. What this says is, the world is complicated, and if we want to be ethical and responsible in that world, we need to change the way that we manage it. Thank you.